Hey guys, and welcome to Game 4 of the Mack vs. Machine series, where I'll be playing 100 games of Scrabble against HastyBot, the top bot on the Woogles.io playing platform. Now, I had a little glitch here with the recording where I started it and the recording wasn't on. And I've only now realized a couple minutes into the game, so I haven't made any plays yet, and I'm down to a little bit over 12 minutes, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it and play this game with a little bit of a time disadvantage and see how that goes. So what I was saying before the recording, before I realized the recording wasn't working, is we have a couple sevens here of Adamoya and Metazoa. Adamoya would probably play over here, which is nice to not put any vowels next to the double letter scores. But on the other hand, Metazoa does score 4 more points, which I think is worth it. Putting the Z here is also really nice on the central square, just because it's not that easy to overlap. You'd have to have an A, and of course it's not going to be easy to bingo either ending or starting with the Z to reach one of the triples. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. Okay, and he plays Gad, and it turns out we've drawn the bingo of D Fangs. So we got to figure out now what the best spot to play it is. I think our best bet is probably gonna be to play it with Metazoan over here. Okay, and he does bingo back with Arteries, so it's turning into a bit of a shootout here. Already 3 bingos in the first 4 turns, and we've drawn another really nice rack here. We have Breezy with an extra E. And I see Breezy is going to play for a pretty massive score here above Arteries. That's actually 58 points. And it does put the Y in the middle of the triple lane, which, of course, all else being equal, I'd rather not do, especially given I have a lead. But at the same time, it's too many points to pass up, and a Y there isn't really that scary. He's quite unlikely to triple through the Y, especially after having drawn 7 random tiles after his bingo. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. So he drops down Nazi through that Z, which I'm perfectly happy to see, especially because it now, for the most part, obstructs that Y. I'm actually close to outpower here if there were an open T, but unfortunately there is no T available. So I'd love to get rid of the W and ideally an O and a U. But that's probably going to be difficult. We do have a nice overlap, though, of power under here, which scores quite well. It scores 38. The OU leave definitely leaves a lot to be desired, but it's probably too many points to pass up. Another spot that's worth looking at is in the top right area here, either to this Y or maybe through this A. I don't really see much here. Ropey is quite terrible, given it keeps a W and a U. It also makes AP, which is not a valid 2, so don't even listen to me. Definitely disregard that. But I really don't see anything. Obviously, WO scores so much less than power that it's not worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and play power. Okay, so the bad news is he has played coin for a lot of points, and we have what seems like not the best rack, but the good news is that Q is very useful to us, and in the interest of time, I'm going to play quiche for 60, which clearly is the best play. It scores a ton of points and unloads a lot of the unwanted stuff from our rack. So he responds with oval, and we're now off to a pretty nice lead in this game. We're up 107 plus whatever we score on this turn. So he's going to very likely need 2 bingos to come back. With that in mind, I'd like to start thinking about trying to play a little defense and making it a little bit tougher for him to bingo. This spot on the bottom left would be also nice to take. I see there's a J left, and I don't want to allow things like Jowl for 60 plus if I can help it. I don't see a great way to use that spot, though. I guess Nook is there. It's not terrible. It's 27 points. EFOU is is certainly not a great leave. The pool is a little bit consonant heavy, though. You can see 14 vowels, 27 consonants, so it does have some potential to improve. I can certainly score a bit more if I play a word with arc or arf. Like, Kef will score 31. It's not that much more than Nook, though, and ONOU is pretty ugly. Probably FOU would be better than either of those for equity, just because EKNO is a much more balanced leave. But I do think I like taking out that O spot, if I can. Food does have the benefit, though, of making bingoing tougher, because now the 7 line under AR, as well as the hooks for dal, like an E or a T, are all blocked. It does give back a line under the U if he starts a word with like a T or an M, but it's a little bit harder to hit. The freedom of different choices he has for tiles to start a bingo with is less with the U than AR. For instance, U, I think he'd have to start with like a T, an M, an S, pretty much, whereas with AR he can also start with an E, for instance, or a B or a C, so it's a little bit harder for him to hit, which is one nice thing about playing there. As for other options here, I don't see anything great. I definitely don't like OKE up here, because this gives back a very dangerous lane on top, hooking, say, an S or to make soak or a T to make toke. That's definitely not something I want to risk in this position. So I think I'm leaning towards probably playing Nook here, just to take out that spot. I do worry about Jowl or something like that. That'll just or Joey, for instance, that'll get him right back into the game with 1 bingo reach. And I think I'd rather take that out now. And then I'm also saving FOU for next turn, which will very likely be my play if it stays open. So I'm gonna go ahead and play Nook. Okay, so he plays what? And I've drawn definitely not what I was hoping for. A lot of vowels. It's probably still worth playing under here rather than exchanging. Now the question is, do I want to play something like Phi, maybe? Because that'll keep, I mean, a better leave than FOU. EIOU is certainly not good, but it's a little bit better than EEII. I think Few this way, though, is maybe a little bit better, just again to make bingos a little tougher. There's a lot more 2 other words that start with an E than start with a U, so this will make 7s a bit tougher for him to play. EIIO is still better than EEII, I have to imagine, so I like this better than FOU. I'm certainly not a fan of keeping 4 vowels. I am hoping at least with 10 vowels and 24 consonants, I'll maybe draw 2 consonants, and then if I have 5 vowels, then I can hopefully work with that next turn. 6 or 7 vowels will be really tough, but I think there's a good enough chance I draw 2 consonants to make this worth playing, especially given its defensive benefits. I don't love keeping 2 eyes with 3 more eyes unseen, but I think that's a risk that's okay to take here, given the situation. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. Okay, so he did play Taj, which is another almost 40 points. So he's getting closer, which isn't great. I am happy that I drew some consonants, though. So I've got a much more flexible rack. I'm close to bingos like Pissolite Polites to an S, even almost Sepiolite as a 9 through this ES if they were flipped. Also Poplitei with a P would be a very fun one. Unfortunately, it's not available. So I don't think any bingos are going to play here. As for what I'm trying to accomplish, I guess my main goal still would be reducing his bingo percentage, or at least hopefully making his bingos score more or give something back to me. I guess his main threats are still bingoing under this U. Bingoing from the K would really hurt, but it is quite unlikely. The problem is that I don't think I can't really afford to play anything across. Certainly something like Pilot is way too reckless at this score, giving back massive bingo lanes, both on the right side and on the bottom. So I may have to sort of leave that lane alone just for lack of a good way to block it without giving even more counterplay back than was already there in the first place. One option to score a bit is poly here. It's still a little more Val heavy. I didn't have much of a choice last turn, but I'm really not a fan of leaving the 2 eyes if I don't have to, given that there's still remain 3 unseen, and having 3 eyes is quite annoying to deal with, as I'm sure we've all experienced firsthand plenty of times. So with that in mind, I'm sort of thinking about maybe Poi over here. It scores a bit less, but it keeps a very flexible leave for next turn, which is always good. I'm not seeing a play that'll have considerably better equity than that. I guess poly is a pretty big difference in terms of score. It's 15 more, which is certainly not anything to scoff at. It is quite a lot of points. I think this is a close call. I mean, ultimately, it might be worth it to play poly, just because the pool is still very consonant heavy, and if he were to bingo and bring this game close, those 15 points could come in a lot of handy. I also do need to play quickly here. I'm down to 90 seconds, so I probably should just make this decision and move on. I think I'm going to go ahead with poly, even though I may end up regretting it. And indeed, I have drawn a 3rd eye, so my fear was definitely not unmerited. And the question is, how do I want to deal with it? I don't see a great place to play something like exit. Might want to just exchange here, perhaps? Don't really see... Oh, actually, I can play exit here with the idle hook. That is... Or next to quiche. Let's see which one is more. This one's a couple more points. Yeah, I think for 27 points, just to really keep him out of 1 bingo range, that's got to be worth it. I don't like ticks and dolt. It just gives back too good a line on the bottom and keeps an extra val. So down to 30 seconds. Let's go ahead and play it. And we've drawn the blank. Do we have any bingos? Don't think there's any 7s. Ella Doizen doesn't fit through the OD. Nothing to the M from the K. Kite line. No good. We have to go very quickly here, guys. Let's just fish. No, let's play exile. And I'm just going to bingo quickly. Oh, I mistyped. And we got away with it. Wow. That turned into a very hectic finish there. I think I misdesignated the blank. Yeah, I typed, I was rushing so much in my time pressure that I played Sintis instead of Cintars. Well, which was, of course, unintentional. But luckily, I was able to get it down with, I think, like a fraction of a second to spare. It almost certainly wasn't my best bingo, but yeah, let's take a look at those last couple turns in a more calm environment now that the game is over, and also look at the earlier parts of the game. I think a lot of my plays early on were pretty straightforward, but they're definitely, I think, later in the game when I had all those vowels, there were some decisions that were a bit more questionable that I want to look at in more detail. So let's take a little bit of a deep breath and a sigh of relief that I was able to get that play down before going overtime. So let's go ahead back to the start of the game. Yeah, I had 1 second left to spare, and I was just basically hitting the pass key, waiting for him to go out, and praying that I wouldn't go over. And luckily I held on. So certainly cost myself a couple spread points there. But just glad that after scoring so well and accumulating such a solid lead, I was able to hold on. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look earlier in the game. So HastyBot, yeah, pretty clearly has to exchange here. He keeps ADS, which is perfectly fine. You could also just keep AS, or even just an S. I think ADS is very reasonable, though. So yeah, this was a turn where Adamoya and Metazoa are indeed the only 7s. Metazoa looks fine. I don't think it's worth sacrificing 4 points here. He plays Gad, which looks pretty good. AEST is always a really nice sleeve. Yeah, Defangs plays in a few other spots, but these score a lot less than hooking Metazoan, and also are quite a lot more risky. So here he bingos with Arteries. Yeah, Breezy is pretty clearly the play here. Nothing else comes even remotely close in terms of equity. Really, the only option or the best option that doesn't open the triple would be Yes, which has its own drawbacks. It takes an O, and I'm just giving up so many points that it's certainly better to just play Breezy here. So fortunately for me, he doesn't really have a lot to work with in this position. Nazi looks reasonable given the other options. I actually might go for Adnoun here, though, just given the score in the game. He's already down over 100, and he's going to need to bingo very quickly and ideally score a lot. So Nazi sort of starts committing himself to a bit of a bad rack and closes down the board a little bit. I think being a little more aggressive or proactive here with Adnoun might actually be called for. It is giving up 10 points immediately, but you're also creating a line on column C. You're just being a lot more proactive about keeping the board open when you're down over 100 points. So I think I actually do like Adnoun better for him. Union is also reasonable here too, sort of a similar idea. Power looks pretty solid here. Boar is okay, but it scores less, and I don't really see a good reason not to just play Power and score a little more and keep things a little tighter there. Coin looks fine for him. Yeah, here I definitely like Coin over Koi to keep things a bit more open. That looks good. Quiche is quite obvious in this position. Here, so... Oh, the bot is saying Nuke. I think I considered Oak. I didn't look at Nuke in that spot, but I'm still fine with Nook through this O. I'm taking out that big threat I was talking about with the J plays of Jowl, Joey, amongst others. And Nuke, I'm not that worried about this N line compared to, say, a 7-line hooking Oak, but at the same time, it's going to be an annoyance that I have to deal with or worry about for the rest of the game. There's plenty of 8s that end in TION or man or something like that. It's not that hard for him to bingo to that N, and I'd rather not give that back if I don't have to. So I think I'm perfectly fine with Nook here. Uke is actually another nice option I didn't really consider during the game. This is probably a little bit better than Food, just to score a couple more points. And if he does bingo now under this E, I'll likely get a big play on the triple under it. That would sort of be the idea behind Uke. I do just have to worry, though, and this is the one thing I think that would dissuade me from playing it. There are certain tiles he could put there. Like, let's say he bingos with something starting with a D, making Ed. And if I don't draw an S or a blank, then I could have some headaches, since I'm going to have to worry about this Ed spot, and I might not have a good way to block it. So I think just because of that potential, given the score, I'm still okay with Nook, just to take away that possibility and kind of keep the disaster scenarios to a minimum. What looks pretty good for him? He definitely needs to score, and he definitely needs to keep a good bingo rack. So MRT, a little constant heavy, but I don't... Trouth is actually okay too, or maybe Routh. Routh is kind of cool because it sets up the T-hook. And MAT I like a lot better than MRT given the slight consonant heaviness of the pool. And having an extra lane, and if I don't have a T, that's not that easy for me to deal with. So having that extra lane he can use is kind of nice. And I think at this score, something like that would be warranted. He's going to need 2 bingos to come back into this game. So if he can bingo once there, and then maybe another time on the bottom, I think that's going to be his best path back. So I actually like Routh for him here over what. I think that would be a very clever play. Not the easiest one to come up with, but pretty cool. So here, yeah, the bot is saying Phi. It's a little bit better in equity, but just because of what I was discussing in the game, that the E is easier to overlap for a bingo than the U is, I think FEU is perfectly good here. So he plays Taj, which looks fine. He's got to get rid of the J and score. Yeah, so it doesn't really look like I missed anything here. My options weren't great. I quickly saw and discarded Pilot just because of how volatile it is at this score. Lipe is an option that I don't really think I looked at, but again, I don't see a good reason to open up this L. Poly does keep the 2 eyes, but it scores 9 more, keeps things tight. So I think this is perfectly fine here. I'm not seeing any reason to give him anything to work with. So this is where things started to get a little bit crazy for me under time pressure. And yeah, exit still looks fine here. It's certainly worth scoring that many points over exchanging. And yeah, ticks, which I briefly saw and dismissed, of course, gives back a dangerous bingo line here with an I or a U, and keeps an extra vowel, so exit looks good. And then here, yeah, this is where I started to panic a little bit, right? I'm down to 33 seconds. The time pressure, I felt like I was managing my time well throughout the game, but it kind of crept up on me at the end. I guess there were those couple minutes I lost at the beginning of the video since the recording hadn't started. So that may have been part of it, but I also could have done a better job, I think, on turns like Poly, maybe playing that more quickly and noticing that I was getting a bit low. So certainly that's not an excuse. I should have still been able to avoid the frantic situation that ensued in a couple of turns. But in any case, yeah, Exile looks fine here. Lay, of course, is not a good play, just because it gives back potentially big bingos on the bottom row. So yeah, I think Exile, I handled this turn reasonably well here, but I did let myself get down to under 6 seconds with still 6 in the bag. So that's, even up 100, that's a pretty terrifying situation to be in. But luckily for me, he had no vowels, and so he plays Bryn, and it does look like I was correct that there was nothing from the K, and at this point I'm just sort of slapping down the first thing I see, and I didn't even consider the possibility of him tripling. I think I quickly looked at the pool and I was like, yeah, I don't think there's very much he can bingo with given the CUVY, and that's probably correct, but I should definitely, of course, if I have time, just be playing something like Stinges or Snidus to 100% secure the win and not put something back in the triple lane for him to potentially triple through and steal this game. But under my panic, I played Sintes, of course meaning to make the blank an R to play Sinters, but frantically typing an E next to the E instead of the R on my keyboard, so I ended up losing a turn, but it all ended up working out since he played Ivory, and I most certainly didn't have time to see sentries through this R that he just opened, so I now correctly managed to play Sinters and bingo out with a single second left on my clock. And after grabbing the extra points from his rack, I won this game by my biggest margin yet, 514 to 372. So overall, I felt like I actually played really well that game. I don't think, not counting the end there, which was purely a result of time pressure, I think I played almost perfectly. There were a few turns that were questionable, like Nook is debatable, Poly is maybe debatable, but I think overall there were no clear mistakes, and that was a very, very solid game. Again, I think we outdrew the bot a little bit. We got both blanks, I think 3 of the S's, so I feel like we had the better end of the tiles, but also played really solidly there, and yeah, luckily my typing skills were just barely fast enough to hold on to this win here and remain undefeated. So yeah, fun hectic finish to a good game, and we're now 4-0, which is a great start, but of course there's quite a lot of games to go, and anything could still happen. So I think that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and check out the earlier games if you haven't yet, and be on the lookout for Game 5 to come soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.